Hey guys, welcome back to Mr. Sulkowski's History channel. I'm going to be covering the last section of the PowerPoint on World War I for AP Euro. This section actually covers the ideas of what's happening with the Russian Revolution and the history of Russia. Normally, it coincides with inside World War I, but it's important to see it as an outside view. I believe is because you see the history of Russia from this point even till modern day Russia today. Okay, so it's not just time capsules in World War One. The Russian Revolution changes everything in Russia, but also the world. So in 1917, red riots erupted, and basically this was going to be the downfall of the Russian monarchy. They hoped basically, even though there were mixed feelings of hope, such as marking like the 300th anniversary of the Romanov dynasty at this time, the entering of Russia into World War I basically led to the downfall of the Russian monarchy that had been going on for 300 years. Some people were hoping for new democratic reform, and that's also why the rest of the world was kind of welcoming, almost in a way, the Russian Revolution. It's because they believed, hey, you know, a democracy might come in, take over, and we might have a stronger ally than we did with the previous ruler, which was the Romanov dynasty, right? That was like a big faux pas for a lot of people because it ended up becoming the communist nation that you think of during the Cold War eras and spreading communism around the world. But they didn't know this, and they thought, you know what, the grass is always greener, I guess. They didn't expect Vladimir Lenin to come to power, and this all kind of was created when Lenin basically won a lot of popularity with the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, which was basically signed in Germany. Basically, this treaty is important to know for AP Europe because this signifies Russia's quitting of World War One, and this is what Lenin basically puts his stand on. Now remember, there's Vladimir Lenin, and from the 1918 times of Russian history, there's Vladimir Putin, which is the modern time president of Russia. Don't get those confused. I know right now it's like, come on, Mr. Sulkowski, but when you're taking a high pressure test, that's a long time. You can make that simple mistake, and for for history teachers in general, it'd be a faux pas for you. Okay, if you like, subscribe, do all that jazz, let me know. And then yeah, so the revolution that happens in Russia was marking like the 300th year anniversary. Even while people were honoring it, there were already a couple of revolutions stomped out. By this time, 2 revolutions up until 1917 were actually stomped out, meaning it wasn't like something that completely took everyone off guard. Previous revolutions were already kind of like quelled, like stopped at this point. Now, the outbreak of World War I really was the nail in the coffin for Russia. Okay, so previous to World War I and Russia getting involved, they had similar wars and similar issues, and the most famous one was the Crimean War and then the Russo-Japanese Wars. These 2 wars signified and showed Russia and the world how ill-adapted Russia was for the modern world going forward. Okay, meaning when they got into these wars, they realized that they were really behind in technological advances in industrial railroads and gun manufacturings and stuff like that. It was like a wake-up call, like, guys, we were really behind. World War I was a final nail in the coffin. They had warning signs before that they didn't progress far enough or fast enough to basically keep up with the rest of the world. And in this time frame, Europe, right? Keeping up with the rest of Europe is always the game of Russia. At this time in World War I, they came in prideful, but it kind of like quickly subsided when they weren't even able to get ammunition to the front line. For instance, factories could not turn off enough supplies. Railroad systems start to break down. It was very archaic, very little railroads at all, kind of. But if you got anything there, you got either choked coming in, they couldn't get the supplies to the front line, or make any supplies in total. For instance, by 1915, many of the Russian soldiers had no rifles, right, or no ammunition. Imagine being sent into a war where there's guys with machine guns and poison gas and all this stuff, and they send you in, and they're like, here's some boots, have fun. And you're like, do I get a gun? They're like, oh, wait, let me think. No, okay, I can get you a rifle. Sorry, but I can't give you bullets. You're like, what do I do? And a lot of the generals were like, well, you know what? Go out on the battlefield and find one off of someone that's been taken down. That's the advice given to these people at this time. So you can imagine how how crazy, and it shows you how ill adapted they were for the modern times. Badly equipped and kind of losing out on this type of like just not having enough. They have the pride, they had the people, they just didn't have the tech to keep up. Even Nicholas II goes out, and this is the king of the monarchy of Russia. He goes out in a gesture to like kind of whip everyone into shape, but it proves that he's actually more ill adapted to prepare for the modern time World War I weapons that are going on and the new style of tactics than his own generals, right? Because it's a nice gesture, but in reality, he just kind of like mucks it up a little bit, messes it up more. The Tsar was basically no more competent, and while he's away doing supposedly helping for World War I, he has this very famous story of the Romanov dynasty, the historical family. Basically, that's where you get the Anastasia story, so you guys might be familiar with that. But while he's away, they had this mystic Rasputin into the family circle, right? This close-knit tie of family circle. And everyone was wondering why he was there, kind of like he was known for being very shady. And as Nicholas II is going off to war, rumors are flying that Rasputin's actually having an affair with his wife, and people are not really like, they think that now the monarchy's just lost it, like they literally lost it, they're just lost power and everything else. No one knew that this mystical man really had powers. That's what they quote unquote say, that he was able to continually save their son from hemophilia. His bouts when he got hurt, he would immediately be healed. So it's kind of like why he was kept around. But from the outside view of the Russian people, it just was like the last bit of last straw that they could have with the Russian people. So what ends up happening is people are starting to riot. Disasters in the battlefield, along with food shortages in St. Petersburg. Workers are going on strike. And eventually, on the advice of his military advisors, because Nicholas II hears about these riots going back, he wants to go back to try to save his monarchy. And in the train, his advisors stop him and like, look, don't even go back there, they'll kill you. Step down, that's your only shot right now to kind of get out of this. And even though he says that, him and his family don't survive. But he steps down, and when he steps down, Duma, the politicians set up a provisional government. The Duma is important because the Duma was basically something that he had set up, the Romanov dynasty had set up as a quasi like progressive movement towards a political government, but it had no real power. And then when they actually do get power after he steps down, they're very susceptible to outside influences taking them over, and then that's when you get the new changing of the guard. Remember, with the monarchy falling in Russia, now you have like a brand new book, right? A blank page to write in. Where's Russia going to go forward? They set up a provisional government. This was known as the Petrograd Soviet, or the Council, right? So they did a lot of Soviet Union, that kind of idea. It's made up of workers, so it had some ideas. It had some good people working there to kind of figure out what to do with this new leaf, this new turnover with the actual monarchy gone. They had 3,000 workers, 2,000 to 3,000 workers, soldiers, and social intellectuals. Outside the provisional government, revolutionaries throughout Russia were also plotting their own kind of takeover and what they wanted to do with the future. Just like how you have people today in any government, any faction, every walk of life, saying, well, if I had it, I would do it this way. That's what's happening at this time. But during this time, it's completely blank for them to actually do something with it, change the world forever, change their country forever. In cities all around Russia, they set up these Soviets, which were councils and soldiers. So it's kind of like a representative of the people. After which a dramatic shift came from the Bolsheviks, which was a radical group coming in. The Bolsheviks mean majority. Now this is important because this is where Lenin comes into play. Vladimir Lenin is the leader of the Bolsheviks. And the Bolshevik Revolution is literally also known as the Russian Revolution. It's interchangeable, so make sure you don't get thrown off if you see Bolshevik Revolution along with the Russian Revolution. Now, Lenin coming to power, he came from a middle-class, wealthy family. He was a brilliant revolutionary, and he was immersed in the works of Karl Marx. He spread Marxist ideas among factory workers. Remember, Marx is between the haves and the have-nots. Spreading ideas among factory workers are spreading ideas among the have-nots. He adapted Marxist ideas to fit Russian conditions. So this is important by thinking of standards of Marxism, and then the idea of like a communist dictatorship kind of going into that kind of field, is that Marx theorized a new world by eliminating the ownership of property. What the people such as Russia, North Korea, and China and Cuba, what they do is they kind of warp that idea to gain their political dominance and then take over. So meaning Marxists never theorized to have a dictator in control of everything, right? So they kind of use his ideas, kind of warp them to fit their situation, and also maintain power. Now, even though set up elite groups to lead the revolution, he set up a dictatorship and it had a small percentage of socials in it. He called his group the Bolsheviks, meaning the majority. So he labels his group the representative of the majority, even though they're not really the representative of the majorities. So he's very cunning in his work. While Lenin's Bolsheviks promised peace, land, and bread for people that are starving, that there were serfs before. Serfdom was still kind of a new thing in their heads. It was recently eliminated, but still was like lingering in their memory. He promises peace, which is great. No more war. World War I, get out of there. Land, you never had land, now you have land. And bread, you're gonna have food. So this is like the most important thing for anybody, right? By 1917, Red Guards, which were armed factory workers joining mutinous sailors in the Russian fleet, attacked the Provisional Government of the Duma, right? They literally attack it. Why is it important to note the Red Guards? Is because red is also a label for someone that's a communist, and that's used in the 1950s with the Red Scare in America. So if someone says that or it's alluded to that, it's literally labeling someone a communist by saying red, just so you know, and that's why having that in bold is important. In just a few days, Lenin's forces overthrew the Provisional Government without a struggle, and the Bolsheviks quickly seized power in other cities. It was like a dominoes effect. Now, brought by the power, they ended private ownership of land and distributed land to peasants. So they won a lot of support that way. They established a new hammer and sickle symbol of the, which was a symbol of the Soviet Union. If I go back here for a second, I apologize, I don't have a picture of it right here. Oh, maybe it's in the end. Oh, I think it's here. You can see it in the background here. The hammer and sickle, that represents the working class people. The hammer is someone in a factory. The sickle is a farming tool that was used to harvest grain. So in that symbol, it's representing the people. Okay, so that's why it's important. You see it in the communist flags, because it's representation of the hardworking people, the workers, right? And that's basically what they were giving the power to. Later, the Bolsheviks were renamed communist, so it's interchangeable with a communist. And the Bolsheviks mobilized the home front for a war communist, meaning to create and kind of whip up Russia into this type of communist nation. They nationalized banks, industries, and outlawed private enterprises. They did like a whitewashing of Russia, and then later to follow, you have Stalin, then you have Mao Zedong for China. You have Fidel Castro, you have Kim Jong-un, his family, the Kims. So it's something that you see starting to spread throughout. But Russia is the first one to turn over and become a communist nation, which is pivotal because from this period of time to today, you have that all around the world as something to talk about, an issue, and different nations adapt this type of theory in their government/economic systems. So I hope you like this video. Like, subscribe, all that jazz hands. And yeah, I'll see you next time, guys. Thanks for watching.